water improve industrial efficiency. Now, water is from daily drinking to buying steam turbines, water to survive and to thrive. With this in mind, we need to remember that the use of water in our industries needs to be sufficient and sustainable to enhance productivity. To guide us more on this matter, we will be having the privilege to listen to three speakers. First, we'll be listening to Mr. Vinay Chattaraju. He is the CEO of Krishnam Industries. Mr. Vinay is an industry pioneer in data-driven water management and is the founder and CEO of Krishnam Industries. His work will help us better understand the idea of continuous internal water audits for increasing water use efficiency. Later, we'll be having the privilege to listen to Mr. Prasad Babu. He's the founder and CEO of Geoclimate Risk Solutions, GCRS. Mr. Babu founded GCRS, which is a startup geared towards building solutions around environmental risk. Mr. Babu will tell us more about water sustainability and water credit around industries. Finally, last but not the least, we will be hearing Mr. Ankit Magan, a waterpreneur. He's dedicated towards working for rainwater harvesting and flood mitigation. Mr. Magan has worked with many NGOs in order to improve sanitation and implementation of low-cost harvesting systems in rural areas. So before we begin the seminar, I'd like to hand over the baton to Mr. Amitosh Gautam, to say a few words about the National Productivity Council of India.
So first of all, thank you, Anchit, for that introduction. I'm sure that most of our viewers knows about National Productivity Council, but they may not be knowing that today is the foundation day of NPC. NPC was formed in the year 1958. So it's a veteran organization in terms of productivity improvement in the country. As you all know that with the improvement in the guidelines given up by the government of India, NPC is following all those activities and actively taking part in various domains. So water is one of the domain due to the current CGWA no objection certificate guidelines. NPC is actively taking a lot of part in the water audit activities. And here in the state of Gujarat, we are actively helping out the industries in getting their water audit done. And as far as we are concerned, because we work a lot into productivity improvement, so this remains a gray area, especially if you see that industries are not, I mean, they are paying attention, but of course, there are many other things for them to pay attention. So water is getting secluded. But due to these NOC guidelines, everyone is now talking about water. Every industry, whenever we are visiting, they are now getting much more focused. But the attention has to be diverted towards the metering. That's why, like the company Vinay has found, they are doing an human service for the industries, providing them water metering solutions. And that is the need of the hour. As you see on the guidelines part, so first thing which we always talk about is about if you are not able to measure something, you are not going to improve on that. And once we enter industry, even our focus was slightly on the different aspects, suppose like energy management. But when we started discussing about water, we got an understanding that through water conservation, we can also conserve energy. And at the same time, if you want it to be sustainable, these are the two key elements. The two key performance indicators where we really have to stress upon. And fortunately, I was able to attend one of the program discussion with the members of the EU, European Union, and they were also working a little bit more on getting the materials out of the wastewater. So that's again another area of concern. I think Mr. Prasad Babu is much more well versed with the geoclimatic risk, and he will be a little bit focusing more on that. So today's session is the need of the hour. It is being discussed all over the country, and I'm sure all the three of our speakers are eminent. They know their subject very well, and they are working really hard. So I am glad that we are hosting this session today during our Foundation Day. And with this small brief introduction, I wanted to pass the next session to Mr. Vinay, followed by Mr. Prasad and Mr. Ankit. So I welcome all three of you, and thank you very much for your time and attention. So Anchit, you have to moderate, and now over to Mr. Vinay.
Yeah, thank you, Amitosh ji, for your warm welcome. And congratulations on the Foundation Day of NPC. So it's quite an old organization working on increasing the productivity in generally, like, so I got to hear about NPC probably an year back, so National Productivity Council, like, so the name itself says that, okay, there's some organization which is working on increasing productivity in India. My experience has been into both, so energy space and the water space. So before, so co-founding Kritsam Technologies, I was, so working with another smart energy metering company based out of Hyderabad. So energy sector is a little progressive sector compared to the water sector. Okay, so as per what I observe is, so how energy sector is in 2010 is how the water sector is in 2020. So I see almost a decade gap between the energy and the water sector. So now we are talking about smart energy meters, smart grid in the complete so national grid is moving towards the smart direction. But whereas water management in India has primarily been guesswork even today. Okay, the reasons so based on my experience, if I identify between the power sector and the water sector is the measurement technologies. Okay, so primarily there is no power supply available in the water resources. Okay, so electricity monitoring is comparatively easy because you have a power supply there. Okay, so water monitoring is difficult because you need to run those things on batteries, or you need to run those things on something low power instruments. So this is one thing which what I observed is one of the major hurdle, because so all the appliances or all the instrumentation which is related to the electricity would not require any low power technologies there. So but thanks to the advancements in the technologies and the battery technologies, the new lithium ion batteries have also fairly evolved. So now over the last 3-4 years, so we have put significant effort into this direction on how to make instrumentation, measuring instrumentation on the water. Okay, so so we have worked on two major instrumentation, and in one of a hackathon by the Ministry of Water Resources and River Ganga Rejuvenation. So we have proved them if we can measure water level and water flow. Okay, so these are the two parameters in water on the quantity wise. If we can measure the level and the flow, we will be able to do the water budgeting for the whole country. Okay, starting from a rivers, reservoirs, canals, lakes, ponds, tanks, overhead tanks, groundwater extraction. This is primarily, these are the only two applications. One is the level, one is the flow. Okay, so keeping this so broad picture in the mind, so we Kritsam has developed multiple instrumentation in this. So we have developed a radar based water level instrumentation which measure the surface water level of any sources. So we have deployed these instruments over the river Ganga and its tributaries in the upper Ganga basin region. So starting from Himalayas to the plains almost up to Varanasi, we have deployed multiple stations, which we are honored to say that so we were able to do some notable impact during the ongoing Uttarakhand floods also. Okay, so where Central Water Commission was using this data, we could not, of course, predict this, but yes, so once the event has occurred, this data was continuously used to monitor what is the recurring increase in water levels, or is it reducing or increasing, to take timely actions by the CWC is what we say. But yes, this is a very small impact which we have created. So what we again recommend is we need to have a much dense network of such stations on probably every 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers on every river, on every tributary and every reservoir, ponds, lakes, canals, to quantify what is the source, what is the volume of the source which we have. Okay, and from there we talk about so how much to be distributed, how much to be allocated to the agriculture sector, how much to be allocated to the industrial sector, for the domestic sector, because all the sectors have their own equal importance. So yes, agriculture is predominantly dominated important sector in India, but yes, it doesn't mean that industries have to be undermined. So it's not at the stake of suppressing the industries. Industries are the revenue generation sector, one of the major revenue generation economy booster in the country. So it has to be very rightly optimized between the allocation of the water. So as Mr. Amitosh has rightly said, so if to do that, the first and foremost thing which we need to do is basically the measure water. How much water is available, where it is available, and when it is available. If we have this data, then we'll start building on the activities of how much to be allocated, how much to be used, where are the losses, where is the drop in efficiencies, how do we increase this. So we have this broad estimates currently. The latest report says that almost 89% is used in the agriculture, and 7% is used in the industrial, and so 5% is used in the domestic. That's a broad number we have, but this is like when you're talking about a scale of in India, just broadly saying agriculture is using 9% would not be of much so help. So unless we point out and say, okay, this is the part, this is the part, this is where, like, so to produce 1 kg of rice, we are using this much, some 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water. To produce 1 kg of tan leather, we are producing this much amount of water. To produce 1 kg of or 1 ton of so textile or a paper or something. So we need to come up with this more precise measurements of so what is the water productivity in each sector. Okay, so in keeping that as a background, so Kritznam Technologies has been working with various industries in and around Kanpur now we have expanded to NCR, Rajasthan, a couple of places in Gujarat and Maharashtra also we started our presence. So we are in a we have decided that so industries being one of the major economy boosters for the country, and so whenever there is a water crisis, so people will not talk about the agriculture. People only come to these industries. Okay, people will come to the tanneries. People are going to come to the so the amusement parks. So where there is a water crisis, and so the amusement parks are wasting the water. So what we feel was so they need a helping hand. So their job, so their business is the leather business. Their business is the entertainment business. Water is not their core competency. So they need a hand holding from the technology providers, somebody who understands water, somebody who understands the background, history, and also the future of the water. So this is where Kritznam Technologies as an organization is is trying to help the industries in making increasing their water efficiency. So understand so what has been their data in the past, analyzing their data from the past, and also showing them, okay, what is the future looks like, what measurements they have to take in today to ensure that they are water secure for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 50 years, whatever there is, because these industries have been established with a lot of budget. So my father works in an industry of Ballarpur Industries, based out of, it's in paper and pulp industry. So it was one of the very booming industry which gave life to more than 10,000 families. So in Warangal district in Telangana, but because of some very unfortunate events, so the plant has to shut down like 5 years back. So it's a very unfortunate thing. A lot of families have gone onto the roads. So we are one of the victims of this. So keeping that as a background, so we are here to share one of the solutions which we have developed for the industries on how to be how can the industries work, start taking baby steps to ensure that they are water secure. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Right. So keeping this as a background, so the solution which we are currently offering, or which we have providing to this industry, is continuous internal water audit for industries. So like again we were just touching base, so the first important part is what is on the water measurement. Okay, as per the CGWA guidelines, so we are so thankful to Central Ground Authority that so they have come up with a more updated guidelines, though they are little strict towards this industries, so but they are very much timely to ensure that so we actually build a sustainable water future. Okay, so we are talking about mass moving of the places, humanity from cities to the villages, or so places because of over exploitation of the water, because of lack of water quality or the quantity part. So so though the rules are little stringent, so we are trying to support the industries with the technological solutions on how do they comply with those guidelines, and how do they also ensure that they are water secure for the future. So one of the major stress which the industries are doing is the water auditing, through which they do the 20% reduction of the water over the next 2 to 3 years as per the CGW Act. So this is one solution which we recommend to the industries on, how can they potentially do it. Commonly what the industries think is, okay, so to reduce 20%, we have to change the whole infrastructure. We have to bring a more energy efficient boiler, more water efficient process, a better water RO plant, or a better so treatment plant, and all they talk about. So but based on what our assumption is, what our observations, we can reduce up to 20% water just by disciplined usage of water within the industry, is what our observation in almost all the industries which we have visited so far. We visited more than 100 plus industries in the last few years. So this is the broad observation. Monitor the actual cost of water associated with the product unit economics. So again, the common answer which we heard from the industries is like, so why should I meter this? Why should I monitor my water usage? Because the water free hai. Or it is a very negligible cost. So if I like a 1 rupee per kiloliter is like, okay, so I'm using 100 kiloliters, I'm paying, let's say, so 100 rupees per day. I don't mind paying that, so my revenue is, let's say, a few lakhs of rupees, so I don't mind paying 100 rupees per water. So, but what we observed was, the actual cost of water is not what we pay to the groundwater usage, but the cost associated is high on the pumping, storage, and the treatment. These are significantly high costs which the industries could not as such accommodate in the cost of the water. So through this, we will be able to very much justify that, okay, the cost of unit water is some XYZ. Track the inefficiencies in water use and improve organically. So we are talking about not an innovative technologies all of a sudden changing the process. We are talking about change in habits. Okay, so this will happen only organically, step by step by taking the baby steps. Okay, it will be very difficult for a big organization to drastically come and say, okay, now we are changed the whole plan, now kal se pura alag hoga. So there will be a lot of chaos within the industry. There will be a lot of resistance from the workers, resistance from the managers. So why all of a suddenly changes? And it is not recommended for an industry also to all of a sudden pivot so their working usage. So we want to make them some baby steps on a day-to-day basis, so that over a period of time, so they have a more efficient system. So this is ISO 46001 standards, which define that water usage efficiency is what they have been defined. So like how ISO 9001, ISO 14001, 26001. So we have this 46001 coming up for this water usage standards. So the big companies, the MNC companies, maybe if you look at Nike and all, so are imposing such kind of guidelines on their vendors. Because India is one of the major exporter of to these MNCs. As there is a pressure keep building on the MNCs to go more sustainable, so the Indian industries will be entitled to move towards this, or they will be suffocated if they don't take the actions from right now. So if such one of their suppliers impose this condition saying that, okay, so we want the industry to be this ISO 46001, again, it takes time to evolve there. So we want industries to be prepared for these more industry standards, to ensure that they have good water usage efficiency. As we can see from the government also, the government in their, we are organizing another webinar series in the groundwater awareness. We clearly see that, so government is going to come up with a more and more stringent guidelines. Again, they also don't want to just bombard with the rules and say that, okay, people do not implement it. So they are going a step by step to a more rigid and stringent guidelines. So we want the industries prepared and not panic when such kind of regulations come. So those are the reasons why so the industry has to do this. So the steps involved in this continuous internal water auditing is, so there are many steps. I'll go step by step. So the first step which we feel is is a digitizing of the pipeline network. Okay, so when we have seen the industries, so that, okay, so why are you not monitoring the water? So the piping network itself is very complex, so since they have, it's not that, so they have constructed the whole industry in a one go. So they have been upgrading step by step. Ek borewell khatam ho gaya to dusra borewell dig kiya, dusra khatam ho gaya to teesra dig kiya. So they have one more sources, then they have added the treatment plant, they have added one more unit of boiler, one more unit of power plant. So so they have expanded step by step. So the first and foremost thing which we felt was, so we need to have a digitized pipeline. What is the source of water, which pipeline is going from which part to which part, to get the data digitally. Okay, and what is the diameter of each pipe, so what is the pump capacity. So everything has to become in the digital format to build anything on the top of it. So this is usually done with a simple survey. So we have approximately taken 7 to 10 days for a medium-sized industries in Kanpur to bring it a more of a digital, the entire pipeline from the source to the final output in a digital format. Next is the classifying the processes. Okay, so broadly again, what we observed was, so there are 5 to 10 major processes any industry would have. If it's a very big industry, there would be bigger processes, but it will be like maximum 5 to 10 processes. If you take about a tannery, it will be like, washing, cleaning, pickling, and drying. So there are like a few steps involved in it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to classify each process. Okay, so this is process 1, this is process 2, process 3, process 4, process 5, process 6, which are using water for their in processes. Okay, and clearly segregating, this is the input pipeline and this is the output pipeline to get into this process. So this will be completely independent of the industry. So it will be difficult to give a common notion for all the industry types. For a tannery, it will be different. For a textile, for a paper, for a pharmaceutical, it is all going to be different. So as an industry expert, so people will be able to identify what is the how to classify processes. And the next step is the benchmarking the water needs. So as per the design capacity, since all these processes have evolved over a period of time, so the industry has been running for for multiple years, they would have some benchmarking for each process. For example, if I take a process of pickling process in tannery, for each batch of some XYZ tons of leather, so this much amount of water has to be added in it. So or for each process in a boiler or in a specific process, so we can benchmark approximately this process is going to use around 10 kl, 20 kl, 500 kl, 100 kl, so whatever it is. Okay, so we need to benchmark each process. I say, what is this ideally supposed to consume per day if you're talking about daily average? So this again depends from industry to industry. As an industry experts or for the specific process experts, we can capture the data and benchmark, saying that okay, ideally as per our usage, this process is supposed to consume this much, is what we need to benchmark the water needs. Third, output water quality we need to measure. So often different processes release different water quality outside, so and they mix all of them into a common treatment plant, and then they try to treat them together. So for a better reusability of water, we recommend to have a output water quality from each process to be checked. So like common parameters like pH, conductivity, DO, turbidity, and the other BOD, COD, or even the anion scan. The overall water quality profile has to be benchmarked for each processes. So once we have this water quality data, so it will be easy to say that okay, so this particular process does not have much impurities, or this particular process output can be reused for some XYZ process. So is what we need to benchmark on the water quality. So now once we have some benchmarking of how much water is required, then so we need to go for this installation of these meters. Okay, so to identify how much actually the water is going from each place to each place. Okay, so we recommend, so we manufacture ultrasonic flow meters, which is one of the most efficient water measurement technologies in the metering. So as if you can see in this photograph, so primarily at the inlet and outlet of each process to see how much is actually going into this, how much is actually coming out of this. Okay, so if we install this meter, and we need to have this data captured in the online. Okay, again, we have seen many industries have installed these flow meters. They have installed a good quality flow meters, even the international brands like Siemens, ABB, Kone Marshall, and all. So, but what we observed was, so they are not able to use the data. The meter is the actual gold mine. The meter is actually the data bomb which they are sitting on it. So we need to have as much fine data from these meters as possible for the analysis. So if we do not capture the data on a daily basis or in an hourly basis or as per the time intervals, if we just calculate the cumulative, this is not going to be of much help for the industry once we don't have the finer amount of data. So we keep getting the data continuously. Again, so in some places we have seen people wrote it manually. They have a logbook, so they come every twice a day or thrice a day. They come and read write the readings in the logbook. We observe that they do this analysis once in a year or once in a month or something. But again, it has not been a very efficient. The meter was not solving the problem which they intend to solve. They had a very right intention, but because of the lack of data available easily to analyze, they were not able to. And so and often when it is manually written, so they just have to fill the record. So sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes even the field people also miss the reading. Chalo isko अंदाजे से लिख लेते हैं. We have seen it many times, so where so even there is nobody there, but we have the reading because they wrote it 2 days later. Okay, so we recommend a continuous online automated data collection process from all the processes wherever the meters are installed. Okay, so now it is about the analysis of the part. So live dashboard for the water budgeting is what we provide. So this data which is being captured from the industry has to be made available to the respective people at the respective times. Okay, again, what we have seen, even the big organizations and even the governments captured the data. ठीक है, हमने लगाने के लिए हमने लगा दिया, हमने टेलीमेट्री यूनिट लगा दिया, स्मार्ट मीटर लगा दिया, सब कुछ लगा दिया. डेटा कहाँ है? मेरा आईटी वाले से पूछना पड़ेगा. What was the point of having such a sophisticated system when you don't have the data accessible when it is there? So so even for this, the recent example where we were monitoring the flood water levels in the Uttarakhand, so we were able to integrate this water levels in the WhatsApp, because so nowadays WhatsApp has become a very useful platform that we want something more like, so what they do is they take a photo of this and then they send on the WhatsApp. So why can't an instrument directly send the data on the WhatsApp? Okay, so we started giving this alerts in the more of a SMS, emails, WhatsApp alerts. Of course, we have a web and mobile dashboards also, but we have provided the dashboard to all the industries, and the opening rate, the way logging in and seeing the data was only like 5% of the people. So we thought, okay, so डेटा मीटर लगाने से कुछ नहीं होता, डेटा ऑनलाइन आने से कुछ नहीं होता, डैशबोर्ड देने से भी कुछ नहीं होता. They need the data in front of their eyes. So that is the reason we came up with this more user experiences of providing the data at their fingertips. Basically, we are just kind of feeding them with the data on a daily basis. So now they call up on a daily basis and say, okay, sir, so thank you for this. Because of which we are able to identify that हमारा मोटर पहले so 10 घंटे में इतना पानी देता था, but अभी हमको 12 घंटे हो रहा है. Okay, so now we are able to identify the motor needs servicing. So these kind of benefits the customers expressed, that they are having. So here, finally in the analysis, these are the various things which we capture and then provide. Total pump working hours every day. Okay, so the meter which we install, so it's one of the unique proposition which we are offering is along with the cumulative flow, we also capture the total working hours. Okay, like how Mr. Amitosh was saying, so it is about, we also identify how much hours the pump was running. Okay, so empirically, if not accurately, empirically, we are able to calculate what is the amount of cost associated with the pumping of the water from the submersible or the any pump in that matter. So we have the volume, we have the working hours, which is going to say that, okay, so at which time to which time the industries are able to work. So in a particular process, it has used 10,000 liters. But at which time? Is there any peak? Is there any peak hour? So is particular point of time पे हमारा इतना ज़्यादा consumption हो रहा है. So we are able to classify them on the hourly basis, and say that, okay, so you are using this total for, let's say 5 hours. You are supposed to, this instrument was supposed to run for 3 hours, but it ran for, let's say 4 hours. I identify process inefficiencies. What is the inefficiency in each process? Identify the pump wear outs. So it's kind of a debugging unit for the efficiency of the pump. Identify the leakages, trends of water footprint, water demand forecast, real-time alerts and notifications, and electricity bill forecast. Of course, only for the equipment which is associated with the water is what we are looking at, all these analysis. So these are some of the dashboards, photographs which you can see. As you can see on the left side, we have this WhatsApp portal where we send this daily messages on the directly on the WhatsApp, where they can interactively say that, okay, what is my consumption for, let's say so and so process number, process 2, process 3, process 4, and compiling a report on a daily basis and then sending them every day in the morning at 8 o'clock. Before I start my day, I get a report for my previous day saying that, okay, so your performance for yesterday has been this much. So today you will instruct, okay, so nahi yaar, aaj yahan pe bahut zyada inefficiency ho raha hai, now you please have a focus on this. So this is how we do this, and we of course have a web and mobile dashboard, and we also integrate this with any third-party dashboards. Often they have an ERP systems or SAP systems which they monitor. So we integrate this data to them so that their process is automatically done. billing, invoicing, and everything. So this is the flow meter which we have developed. So ultrasonic transit time based flow meter. Currently, we have 2, 4, and 6-inch diameters available, which are very commonly used pipe diameters for the industrial market. And we have both battery as well as mains operated meters. But generally, we recommend battery operated because the mains have a chances of tampering. So the battery operated flow meter is called as a tamper proof flow meter, which is again recommended by the Central Groundwater Authority to be installed at all the bore wells for all the industries, all the industries and all the bulk water users. Yeah, so here we are, system technologist. My name is Vinay. I can be reached out. This is my contact details. We are on a mission of empowering nations with the data-driven water management solutions. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Vinay. That was an amazing talk you gave. I'm from an electricity background, and when you compared the water scenario with the energy scenario, I could really resonate with your ideas. I had this question that in energy we have something similar to what we call economic load dispatch, where you dispatch the amount of electricity based on the demand. Okay. It's very optimal, controlled, etc., etc. So now, with my experience in water audits, I have not seen any such system at play simply because there is no data-driven mechanism. Have you explored this area? What is the optimal amount of water that will be extracted from, say, 3 bore wells for 1 day's demand or something like that?
So it depends completely on the capacity of their borewell, capacity of their pump. So unlike electricity, so here it is completely in the pump driven. Okay, so we have seen people who are running the pumps all the 24 hours a day from multiple borewells. Okay, so there are industries who are efficiently working with so 2 to 3 borewells. So going on turns. Basically, they run this for 2 hours and again they run for that for 2 hours. So we have seen all types of industries. So, and the consumption varies based on their allocation limit. So we have been working with small, medium, and large industries as well. So it's difficult to say that what's an optimum usage, and again depends on the process, type of industry, multiple parameters are involved in it. So what I strongly felt was, so people would need some hand-holding for sure, is what I could very strongly gauge that, okay, they have done from their experience, but yes, a little bit of more technical support the industries would definitely need on trying to estimate how much water they actually need. Are we over exploiting? Heart by heart, they are there, so we don't want to over exploit, we just want to do how much we want, but they are just, since it is not their forte, so they could not, there was nobody to guide them basically. So that's what we felt, they need some more hand holding in this part.
Absolutely. Also, you mentioned cost of water, so that usually it is about billing and the amount of water you extract. But people usually don't realize that the amount of money you spend for running the pumps, etc., and storage.
Right.
So can you shed some minor light on what are the costs associated with pumping and how do they compare with extraction costs?
Right. Yeah. So we are still we are working with one major industry in Kanpur. So we are to release a report on that, detailed analysis report on that. So I guess maybe a detailed report will be shared. I'll share with for the public domain. We have taken concurrence from them to publish it so that so other people are also aware of it. So but what my broad observations have been is treatment is one of the major expense on the water. So I guess almost 4 to 5 times approximately the cost which they have estimated. Okay, so my cost of water is suppose let's say X rupees. Okay, but treatment itself is taking let's say 4 times of their estimate. Okay, which they could not. They have incurred it in the form of it's my environmental expense, but not in the form of so this is actually because I'm extracting more, so I'm able to so I have to treat more. So this is one parameter which we have broadly estimated from our data in one of the industries. And in the pump side also, again, we could not publish them. We could not have a proper comparison with their electricity bill because they don't have the electricity bills for that specific meter. Okay, so we were able to tell that, okay, sir, approximately you are, and they have much bigger processes in place. Let's say their electricity bill is 10 lakhs per month. Okay, and we are able to tell that, okay, so approximately, let's say 15,000, 20,000 is coming from this particular meter. Okay, so like fine, this is actually good information. We would want to work on this to improve it. So we are planning to work on by installing an energy meter at the pump and then trying to compare it with, okay, so how much is the energy meter actual consumption and then how much is the estimate we are able to do only by the flow forecasting. So this is something which we are still working on to develop the use case.
Yes, thank you very much for your insights. We don't have any other questions yet. If we come across more, they will be
There's somebody who raised a hand. I see Chetan Kumar from the attendees.
Sure. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. You know what? Let's give him the chance to speak then. Mr. Chetan Kumar, I'm unmuting you now. You can ask a question directly. Hello. Mr. Chetan Kumar, can you hear me? So I guess there is some sort of issue.
No
Mr.
problem.
Kumar, you can post your question in the Q&A section and we'll try to get back to you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Ji, you are audible. Yes, yes.
For the costing part, I want to understand that generally we are calculating the life cycle cost of water. Life cycle cost of water, including the extraction cost, pumping, storage cost, pumping cost, then treatment cost, the freshwater treatment cost,
Right.
then again the circulation cost, and
Right.
lastly the effluent treatment cost in 3 segments: primary,
Okay.
secondary, and tertiary treatment.
Correct. Okay.
This all constitute the cost of water. And
Absolutely.
we compare when we planning for the water management and compare the any of our initiative with the life cycle cost, we can able to understand the proper understanding of our water conservation project. For
Great.
example, if for boiler, we are generally supply the soft water or RO water for the boiler feed water.
Right.
If we compare the boiler feed water and after UTP RO water feed, both the qualities are nearly same.
Right. Okay.
But there is a major difference in the boiler freshwater consumption reduction and the life cycle cost of the water.
Okay.
In the recycle case. So generally industry do not understand the water also having the life cycle cost.
Correct. Right.
Recycle is the tool. If in monetary terms if we calculate, it will become more understandable for us to judge any project.
Absolutely. So do you adopt any kind of measured values using the metering and all, or how do you measure how much water you are actually treating? Do you have some accurate numbers, or do you just estimate? Okay, approximately this many number of liters are there.
We have each and every process. We measure the accurate measurements through ultrasonic porometer through the portals. Or some process are steady flow process where we measure through portable ultrasonic flow meter.
Okay, clamp on.
To understand that what is our actual flow, and then after same data of few months, we can average it out.
Great.
We can calculate the minimum, maximum, and peak average.
Peak average,
and
right?
Based on that, we can calculate the water consumption.
Fantastic.
And we implement what our experience that recycle is the tool, only tool. Actually, avoidance of the water is the only tool in India by which we can reduce the water consumption.
Right.
For example, I have a requirement in my utility. I have a requirement of 100 KL per day. It is possible I can avoid 100 KL, entire 100 KL per day of wastewater consumption if I adopt the recycle and use fundamental.
Fantastic. Great. So great, Chetanji. So I guess you have fairly put forward this. So the recycling is one of the major contributor to reducing the water consumption. Certainly, and I guess so industries have been adopting this for quite some time now. Okay, so now it's about.
Also, sir, we have made a tool also for calculating the life cycle cost of water. For example, you are extracting 100 KL water from the borewell. What will be the any tertiary treatment cost? Okay. And that to be contributed to that 100 KL extraction.
Right.
Based on the RO recovery calculations and other factors. parameters, TDS and all parameters, we can calculate the effluent treatment cost also.
Sure, great. So we'll be glad to connect with you offline, Chetan ji. So and understand, so how if you have any specific more questions, or so if in case we can learn anything from you, we'll be very glad to do that. Sure. Thank you, Chetan ji.
Sure.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chetan Kumar, for your contribution and your questions. I think we'll move on to the next portion of the event, where we ask Mr. Prasad Babu, founder and CEO of Climate Risk Solutions, Geoclimate Risk Solutions, I'm sorry. He founded GCRS, which is a startup geared towards building solutions around environmental risk. Mr. Babu will tell us more about water sustainability and water credit around industries. Mr. Babu, you may share your screen and unmute yourself to continue.
Yeah, can you make me co-host so that I'll be able to share the screen?
I think you should be able to share the screen without that. Is the option not available?
No, it's not available.
Okay. Give me a second.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Is the screen audible? I mean, visible?
Yes, sir, the screen is.
Yeah, thank you. So good morning to everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. And once again, congratulations to NPC for its foundation day. And it's a privilege to collaborate with you on this day. So I just give the perspective of what we at GCRS Geoclimate Risk Solutions, we think about the water or the natural resource management. So we look at the scenario in such a way that starting from future proofing to the sustainability stewardship. So we aim, whatever we do. So we look at the future, the current scenarios, understanding the current scenarios, and looking at the future proofing through circular economy initiatives, and also some of the global goals such as SDGs goals, and also the corporate sustainability. So we look at all these elements while we are doing providing the services or the solutions. So first of all, I would like to mention that if you look at this particular slide, whatever the water which is available in our environment, either it could be surface water or the groundwater, and we should understand as an industry, we should understand that which is not everything is available is not for us, is not for the utilization. So there is a lot of the water which has to be given to the environment. So it could be for the plant survival, or it could be a biodiversity survival, or in fact there should be some water component. It has to percolate into the groundwater and survive in the groundwater aquifers. And similarly, there is other scenarios where the humans as well as the the environmental flow, it has to be happen. So in most of the cases, when we are assessing the water in a given environment, we try to see that how much absolute water is available and how much we can use. So this is very, very important. So I am going to give a small case study without naming the industry, and looking at that, so for example, in this graph, so if you look at this, so the brownish line, it shows that the consumption, water consumption. Whereas this blue line is water availability in the given scenario. So if you look at this graph, automatically while the months are passing, if you look at 1 year as a scenario, so obviously for some months the water is much more available, and when it comes to the few the lean period, water is available very limited manner in a given watershed. So we have to understand that this is a crucial period for the industry to survive in this scenario. So so this is where how we build the scenario. So we don't look at the industry as a single unit. So we always look at the watershed perspective in such a way that, so industry, you have a competitors. You are not only the industry who are using the particular water resources. So you will have the competitors within the watershed, and you also have the other users apart from the industries. You also have the as I said, the natural biodiversity. They also require the water, and the environmental flow that is also demands the water. And also, as I said, that the aquifer also demands the water. So the aquifer is not meant for withdrawing everything what is exists in the aquifer. So it has to be maintained very harmoniously. So what we do is we look at the watershed in such a way that we build the scenarios by utilization pattern from all the angle, not just for current scenarios but also the futuristic scenario. For example, in this particular graph, if you the chart, if you look at it, you can clearly see that the balance available in this particular watershed. So over the period of time, for a few months it looks very great, but few months it is in the negative kind of. So it doesn't mean that the industry is not surviving there, but definitely in the future, the watershed may be having a different kind of scenarios. Like for example, the current agriculture practices may be transformed into a different commercial agriculture practices, and the current demand of the population may increase very rapidly. While the lifestyle is changing, the water utilization pattern will change. So it means that in the future, so if you have to operate, so you have to look look for the efficient water usage scenarios. And how I will give the few examples of the scenarios how we calculate. The scenario one is, for example, the population water consumption scenario calculated as per the the standards that we government suggests. So the 135 LPCD is the standard, but in most of the cases, in most of the India, so we don't use the 135. But eventually, if you look at this scenario, maybe after 5 years, after 10 years, there could be a chance that that particular watershed, because of the lifestyle changing, so people may use that 135 LPCD. So in that case, so your water availability will be in few months it will be okay, but the rest of the months, so it will be equivalent to as it's like you put some water and you take the entire complete water. And the second scenario could be the rainfall. Considering the maximum deviation, if you look at the maximum deviation in most of the the drought prone region of India, so you always have in the deficient rainfall. So that is again availability of the surface water. And also the scenario, another scenario we can look at it, agriculture. So how the agriculture is changing in time to time. So we look at the in this particular case study. So we have seen a shifting from traditional crops to the commercial crops. It means that they are demanding more water. So we cannot ask the farmers to change the crop because you are running an industry. So obviously we have to act in such a way that, so we have to look at in different kind of format of the watershed. And if you look at the combination of all these scenarios, as I said in first slide, so for the first few months, like from June to October, and the gap between the water availability and the water utilization is perfect. But as soon as it comes to the lean period from October to May, so it is almost equal. It means that whatever is water available in the either in the groundwater or the surface water, which is almost there is no balance, there is no positive or negative balance. You see, almost is matching to these two figures. So the gap is almost zero. So we understand every industry or industrial watershed in this manner, so that industry can survive or sustainability can happen. And looking at this particular example, so one has to plan for the water security plan, not just for within their industrial unit, and also beyond the industrial unit. So as per the ISO standards, we have to look at the water availability in the entire watershed, and how much utilization by the industry, individual industry, as well as the other actors within the watershed, like competitors, and looking at the balance. And also the budgeting is very important. We have to look at the projections and for the future, and also look at the water security plan, demand side and supply side. So while you change the process within the plant, as the previous speaker Vinay said, changing the metering and all, that will give the more impact within the plant. But you also have to look at the kind of outside the plant. what is the demand by others, and also what is the supply. So as the climate change is happening, so you have a the changes in the precipitation in a very irregular manner in most of the cases, and also looking at the water footprint. What is the water footprint by that particular industry, and how much credits you are earning by conserving, or maybe. So the CSR is not just for building some check dams or some ponds, but also looking at the credits, a common source credits by the watershed. All industries can come together in a particular watershed and do the water conservation. So how we achieve to achieve this, one should follow the sustainability stewardship. So these are the 4 key drivers we suggest for the industry. One is the future proofing, as I said. So looking at all the business verticals within the either in the corporate or within the watershed, so they should look at all the elements, not just water, because and the biodiversity and other aspects of the watershed also will give indication whether the watershed is surviving or not. So in a way that we have to look at the holistic environment in a watershed. And looking at the circular economy, like previous the speaker has mentioned, that the reusing and reducing the water consumption is always a better option. And importantly, all the corporates and industry, you should have the goal, meeting some of these national and international goals. That will be the key driver, so that you have some agenda in place, so that you will be able to achieve. And finally, every industry should have this sustainability stewardship within the industry as well as within the groups. And we can follow a smart approach. Looking at you should have a very specific either plant or the watershed or the ecological approach, and it should be measurable. So as I said in my previous slides, so every drop that we available within the watershed as well as the consumption, it should be measurable. Then only we will be able to get to know that whether we will survive or sustain for the future. And also the attainable is not just the government norms say something and we follow, but we have to attain by ourselves, like this sustainability stewardship program that one has to set. And it should be a relevant to the plants that are operating. So that means that whatever you are operating, suppose you are an water intensive corporate or industry, it has to be relevant, and you should really work on that particular watershed. And you always can have the the time the phases in different time phases. So you may not achieve everything within couple of years, but you always can think about future if you have to survive in this particular case. And both the government as well as the global indicators, either natural resource efficiency policy by MOF 2019 or SDGs. So they all talk about sustainability, and we can always use that as a the better approach. As a company, so as introduced by NPC, we are a solution provider in terms of environmental sustainability, and we operate within the geospatial spectrum, using geospatial technologies for the water conservation, water use efficiency approaches, and also giving solutions to the industry. And we are a startup. And this is our journey so far from the 2014 to 2020. And we are a Startup India recognized, and we are incubated in Andhra Pradesh. And also we have an R&D center at IIT Kanpur. And we also GAIL funded. GAIL is our stakeholder. We also have the couple of international MOUs. One MOU notably, we have MOU with Mekrut. Mekrut is a Israel national water company. And this is our the product, how we give the solution to the industry. So this product basically we give for existing industry, we provide the risk information, the water risk information, as I mentioned in the previous slide, and also the sustainability. We develop the scenarios through the tool, so that will provide the industry to look at the the mitigative as adaptive options within their watershed scenario. And similarly, for the proposed industry, we look at again the risk, what could be the risk, and the suitability. Suppose if the new industries has to come up, so we provide the suitability information so that they can act accordingly. They can have an alternative solution. So this works in a geospatial platform. So we have the lot of satellite data or other secondary data get into the platform, and the analytics will operate. From the behind. And for every location, we generate the smart reports so that can be readily used by the industry. And we also have another component of the same solution. So user can directly generate the report as per the Central Groundwater Authority the notifications, the new notification. So all the the 10, 11 parameters of the new notification. So user can easily download the report as and when they require, and the data keeps on updating. That's it from the from my side. So you can contact us. We have a website gcrs.co.in. If you have any questions, I'll be able to answer.
So first of all, thank you, sir, for your talk. I have one question. So it's about sustainability scenarios that you mentioned for proposed industries. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you do contingency analyses, as in what is going to be the deficit in water supply later on, etc.? Can you shed some more light on that?
Yeah, see, as I said, the deficiency, basically, we understand everything at the watershed level. So we build the scenarios in such a way that understanding the historical data that will help us to understand the current scenario. And we build the based on historical and the current usage of the water, we build the futuristic scenario. As I mentioned in a given one case study I have presented. So in that particular watershed, we try to understand what could be the future demand by the industry, and if the business as usual, and what could be the future the water usage, utilization, as well as the availability in that particular watershed. So in this particular watershed, for example, and we have seen historically the farmers are growing a traditional crops. It means that they were consuming less water. Now the scenario has changed. They have moved to the commercial crops, and I'm sure that in the future also they are continue to grow the same crops. But whereas the total water availability remains same. So that has to understand by the industry. Industry maybe when they started 20 years back or 30 years back, they might found that the water is available, much water is available. They are next to the river bank, but now they don't have. And similarly, the population consumption also increasing day by day. So they are not fully utilized. In fact, when I say the 135 LPCD, the current scenario, population is using only the 55 to 60 LPCD. But if the lifestyle changes, as economy grows, definitely their consumption rate will increase. So which means that there will be more demand, and that is the kind of scenario.
Sir, you mentioned historical data, and in certain sites, first of all, how do you exactly get hands on such historical data? Is it that you have placed instruments for that, or is it available in the public domain, or is it also variable, as in depends on the location where the industry is being proposed?
For the historical data, satellite, we depend more on satellite imageries, because satellite imageries will fairly give the lot of information, especially land use pattern, and also the climate change data, the previous rainfall and previous water availability. So, and also the groundwater, historical groundwater levels, the trends, groundwater level trends will also help us to understand, how the water is declined or going up. Yeah.
All right, so that's it for my questions. I'll let's see if anyone else has questions. None that I can see. All right. So first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Prasad Babu. It has been amazing talking with you and listening to you. We will move on to Mr. Ankit Magan now. So, yeah. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ankit Magan. Sir joined us a little later than the rest of the session. Mr. Ankit Magan is a waterpreneur. He's dedicated towards working for rainwater harvesting and flood mitigation. Mr. Magan has worked with many NGOs in order to improve sanitation and implementation of low-cost harvesting systems in rural areas. First of all, Mr. Madan, I really like the term waterpreneur. Amazing. And I'll give you the mic and we would love to listen, hear you out. I'm giving you the privileges to share your screen.
Sure. Thank you so much for making me part of this amazing event.
Sure.
First of all, thank you to all the speakers, because the knowledge that you have provided, that's quite amazing and quite wonderful. So yes, I'm Ankit, and we at Retas are basically into freshwater management, where we mainly focus into rainwater harvesting. So our journey started 3 years back when I and two of my friends were stuck in one of the floods in Gurgaon. There we realized that it took us almost 5.5 hours to cross Gurgaon. There we realized that, boss, either one has to solve this solve this problem, and the other problem was that people were making rainwater harvesting system earlier also, but that was not effective. So I always tell that rainwater harvesting is like a wearing helmet. You wear helmet only just to avoid fine. You do rainwater harvesting just to get NOC. Afterwards, what is happening in rainwater harvesting, no one takes care of that. So if pollution control board or any person visits from different authority, then only those systems are being maintained. So after searching on rainwater harvesting, we realized that the problem was with the system and the design, because maintenance of rainwater harvesting was a tedious job. Central Groundwater Board says that every year one has to maintain rainwater harvesting system. But what needs to be done? You have to open the pit for 48 hours, have to open the manhole, then you have to desludge it, take out all filtration media, which is boulder, gravel, sand, wash the boulder, put it back, put new gravel and sand layer, and get the bore cleaned through compressor system. It is a tedious job which takes at least 3 to 4 days, minimum 3 to 4 days, and the cost was also high. So for a small pit also, the maintenance cost was coming around 25 to 30,000 rupees. Then after research in various part of in various countries, we realized that there are better systems. So there we designed this modular rainwater harvesting called RainMax system, where we were solving two problems. One, that was water scarcity through rainwater harvesting. Second problem is also a major problem, where we are facing problem of plastic. So we are using recycled polypropylene material. We are taking this from various factories, like all kind of automobile sectors, FMCG sectors, and various other sectors, where we are using this plastic to make a rainwater harvesting tank. So moving on to the presentation, I hope my screen is visible, the presentation is visible. So
Yes, sir, it is
this is
visible.
this is the story, which I'll not spend much time on this, because previous speakers have already explained all these things in detail. So as we know, the agriculture consumes the maximum amount of water, and then its industries. So there are various practices that NGT has also started along with Central Groundwater Board, Ministry of Jal Shakti, where all these we will be having better equipment, where the water requirement will be reduced, various methods how we can reduce the water consumption. So what is the risk as of date? So it's basically the groundwater depletion. You won't believe that there are a lot of factories in Gurgaon. They are planning to shift from Gurgaon to other areas because the water quality has been deteriorated, and water level has been depleted. Now they are shifting. They were, I'll say they were involved in depleting the water and deteriorating the water quality, because through rainwater harvesting, few industries, they were doing was they were putting back their waste inside the earth, liquid waste and all. So now the risk is so much that if industry shift, so whole employment, whole the cost of the city will change. Then we are highly dependent on the surface water availability. And believe me, it's not a permanent solution. If we are not sustainable today, it's not a permanent solution. And there can be day zero in Gurgaon, there can be day zero in Bangalore. Chennai faced day zero, but the number of rainwater harvesting pits that Chennai has is amazing. Since that was not maintained, that is one of the reasons there was day zero. And there's a report which says if 57% of the building do proper rooftop rainwater harvesting, then there will be no day zero in India. So now the change in future rainfall pattern is the worst problem. Agriculture, this thing. And what Central Groundwater Board has done, Central Groundwater Board has divided India into 4 zones. Now there are 5 zones: safe, semi-critical, critical, overexploited. Now there's notified zone. So wherever we are sitting, it's basically under overexploited zone. And say if you are extracting X liter of water, you have to recharge at least 2x of the water. How is it possible? Because you have limited amount of rain, you have limited amount of rooftop area, plus the requirement. Let's say if you have a paint shop, if it's a textile mill, you have huge requirement. So what government has proposed is that you can have rainwater harvesting system within your premises, plus you can adopt various pond in different villages after getting the Khatoni and Kasra number, and that you can adopt and get the rainwater harvesting done there. This is the easiest way of doing rainwater harvesting, by adopting pond, but no one is monitoring the pond and the usage. So that is one of the reason earlier we were talking about uh, water meters and all that needs to be done. That should be done for all kind of ponds also, because industries are adopting these pond, but no one is monitoring the amount of water that is getting recharged. Either you can have piezo meters installed, so that at least you will have basic idea whether we are working in the right direction or not. Because rainwater harvesting is a scientific topic, and till the time we don't understand the aquifer, we don't understand the strata, there's no point of doing recharge. So rainwater harvesting can be stored and reuse, can be recharged, can be percolation. It can be anything. In India, we keep on following recharge system. But why do we have to recharge? First of all, we are collecting the water, we are putting back to earth. Then we are, by using electricity, we are extracting the water. Can't we store that water and do the local usage and all? But yes, there is a limitation that how much water we can save, how much land do we have. So these are some of the beautiful pictures of Bawdi, and a lot of Kumas also, where rainwater harvesting was practiced in a beautiful manner. So these number of steps used to tell you that how many months water is available. So this was the kind of water audit that was done in that area, in that era. So there were various, like there were lion, horse, elephant located at various steps, and there they used to tell you, boss, 6 महीने का पानी बचा है, we can sustain, or if there is scarcity of water, then we need to plant something. So these are some of the other pictures of various Bawdi. This is the conventional section view of conventional rainwater harvesting, where the government says that stormwater has to enter to a desilting chamber, right, where sedimentation process will take place, and after that, water will enter inside this RCC or brick pit, where we will have filtration media of 1.5 meter, which include boulder, gravel, sand. Nowadays, we use activated carbon also. So after water enters inside the distilling chamber and sedimentation is done, then finally it enters into the rainwater harvesting pit, where because of the void area inside these filtration media, water finally reaches to the slotted pipe of the borewell and gets to aquifer. So if RWH pit is not maintained, this is the condition. You won't believe We did a survey in Noida SEZ, and 89% pits were clogged like this. So if it's not maintained, then there's no point to do rainwater harvesting. You are actually putting sewer water inside the tank, or you're putting polluted water inside the aquifer. Then you have to drink that water. So nowadays, when we talk about organic farming and all, we talk about having vegetables in Noida. We don't suggest that this is all. There's no organic farming which is possible near Noida because of the quality of water we have in nearby area. So before rainwater harvesting is planned, there are few questions that needs to be answered, because in many places when we meet architects or the usual answer that we get is 1 acre है 1 pit, 2 acre है 2 pit, 3 acres 3 pit. Why? We have to know the rooftop area, green area. Every area has its own coefficient. If you have a tin shed roof, it will have much higher coefficient as compared to normal flat roof. So it's a scientific thing. One has to know the amount of water. If we are working in Delhi, the rainfall pattern will be different than what it will be in Meerut. So if I'll talk about Noida, I don't know if there's any audience from Noida, but within Noida, there are 5 zones. So towards expressway, if we do a lot of bore wells, because the recharge rate is very high, because Yamuna used to flow in that area. But if we move towards Sector 62 or Ghaziabad, the recharge rate is very less. So we increase the size of tank rather than increasing the number of bore wells. So, first one has to know the rooftop area, green area, paved area, then the drainage pattern. This is very important because we design rainwater harvesting without knowing the drainage pattern, where exactly this needs to be done. And if there is a slope on the top, you can see the slope, but how aquifer is flowing in which direction, that also needs to be done. But for a larger project, otherwise one has to know the drainage pattern, soil strata. If you're talking about doing rainwater harvesting daily, then percolation rate is very important, because recharge pits are not allowed in Delhi nowadays. So percolation rate of that area is very important. If there's any percolation, then only go for rainwater harvesting. Otherwise, recharge system, percolation system. Otherwise, go for store and reuse. There is no point of spending money on a percolation pit if there is no percolation rate. Then get the data from IMD about average and peak rainfall, and on that basis only calculate the amount of water that will be coming in rainwater harvesting pit. Last question, which is very important for industrial purpose: what is the annual extraction of water you guys are going to have? Depending on that, we will suggest how exactly rainwater harvesting needs to be done. Most important question: why do you want to do rainwater harvesting? Just to get NOC, or actually you want to do rainwater harvesting, or is there any flooding problem that you are facing and you want to go for flood mitigation solution? Then only a rainwater harvesting system will be designed. So if we don't have data, or there's no bore in that area, and doing bore is a costly affair, so we do vertical electrical resistivity test, which is based on Ohm's law, where you put electrodes and pass current at certain voltages, and then on the basis of resistance, you'll come to know where exactly one has to recharge, what is the soil strata, where you are getting sandy area, where you are getting clay soil. So on basis of that, you will be putting borewell pipes. So wherever you are getting wherever you are getting sand, you will go for slotted pipe, and wherever you are getting clay soil, go for blind pipe. Then only rainwater harvesting system will work properly, because heart of any system, whether it's conventional or modular, is a borewell. Coming to modular rainwater harvesting system, this is how it is designed. We'll have a desilting chamber, an oil trap if it's an industrial area. Then there will be microfilter. So why we have used microfilter? The reason was very simple, that we don't want people to clean rainwater harvesting pit, since it's a tedious job and it's a costly affair. So we want that a pit should be remain as it is for next 50 years. There is no need of maintenance in these kind of pit. So only thing that needs to be cleaned on a frequent basis is microfilter, and a single person can clean that microfilter within 5 minutes. It's like cleaning a trash bin. Take it out, clean it, put it back, done. And then one has to clean desilting chamber every year. We usually provide a maintenance manual where we tell people how they can clean desilting chamber within 6 to 7 hours. So these are the material that has been used in modular air harvesting tank. That is modules made up of recycled polypropylene, geotextile, microfilter. Liner we do use only for store and reuse structure. This is a comparison between conventional and modular rainwater harvesting, where we have a desilting chamber, then a RWH pit made up of RCC or brickwork. So the problem is, let's say you're making 100 cubic meter pit. Effective storage will be from 40 to 60 cubic meter, because if stormwater, let's say the invert level of the stormwater drain is 1 meter, then this is the freeboard area which is coming, which is of no use, but one has to design conventional system. Plus 1.5 meter is the filtration bed. So effective storage capacity is only this. And in modular, we'll design only this. So imagine, instead of 3.8 meter, we are just designing 1.31 meter for the same capacity. This is where we save a lot of cost and time. So the system can be used for store and use, can be used for recharge, population, or you can make drain using the system. So this is a beautiful thing. Anyhow, you will be making stormwater drain, you'll be making rainwater harvesting system. What if I can convert your stormwater drain into a harvesting system? You don't require any harvesting system after that. And during construction time, you require a lot of water for curing. Let's make this tank as a storage tank for curing. After the work is done, take it out, put it as a rainwater harvesting tank or a drain, and the material cost will remain same, and this can be used again and again. You want to expand, open it, expand. You want to relocate, open it and relocate the structure. These are steps that has been used for in case of recharge system. First step is borewell, then excavate, then we do base preparation, where we will be using stone chips and sand, compact and done. After that, we'll install geotextile, place our modules, wrap it with geotextile, weld it, backfill it, and done. So we completed 4,14,000 liter tank in just 48 hours. So it's so quick. In case we are going for store and reuse, we do soling, PCC, then geotextile, no need of borewell. After that, we will be using EPDM liner. Then second layer of geotextile just to protect liner from reptiles or the edges of tank. Install the tank, wrap it from all 6 sides, done. You can pump out the water through pipes or chamber. Then we install microfilter and finally desilting chamber. So this is 6,50,000 liter tank installed in one of the industry, FMCG sector industry, where we have installed this tank, and now for 4.5 months, they are not dependent on municipal supply or borewell. They are using their rooftop water for their production. So imagine the quality of water that they are getting. We are all out of tank using these recycled material. So you get extra point if it's a green building, you get extra point for using this material. So these are some of the photographs of site execution. Best thing is the final surface, land, which is so expensive in this era. So the top surface can be used for parking, driveway, landscaping. You'll not come to know that there is any rainwater harvesting pit below this. Only thing you are going to see is this one round filter and a desilting chamber manhole, nothing else. This is a comparison. This is a work that we completed in Noida for Siemens, and here you can see the difference. The cost of conventional was 33.7, whereas the cost of modular was 18.46. and we completed this work in 10 days. The time that we gave us was you have to complete this within a month, and we completed this project including civil work in 10 days. So you can see the difference. The length is same, the width was same, the only difference is this height, and this is a huge difference. 1.31 and 5.31, this is a huge difference. These are some of the other advantages. It's safe, it's load bearing, time required is less. You get extra point for using the material. Other thing is, when we talk about pond, what we are doing is, let's say there's a village and sometime there was some pond which was used for rainwater harvesting. We select that pond, as per colony, we measure the area and all. If it's a sewerage pond or grey water that is coming inside the pond, we divert it to the central STP system or the line which is going to STP, and all the rainwater of that area is diverted to this pond. The depth of pond has been increased, it has been cleaned, and after that we install RWH conventional system on the field of the pond at certain height, so that minimum amount of water is always there for animals or for daily usage what they are using, but not for washing or anything else, maybe for fishing and other things. And if during rainy season when they were facing the problem of flood, the overflow of this pond will enter inside the rainwater harvesting pit. At the periphery, we have these kind of system where we install conventional rainwater harvesting system at the periphery, and if required, we do install piezometer if it's a non-CSR project. These are some of the clients. So that is all I wanted to discuss regarding modular rainwater harvesting and rainwater harvesting. If there's any question, just let me know anytime.
I'd like to declare it to the audience that we're open for questions if they have any. They can post them in the Q&A section or raise their hand. Seems like there aren't many questions. In fact, there is none. So, so I'd like to conclude this session on how it has been. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of our speakers, Mr. Magan, Ankit Magan, sorry, Mr. Vinay Chattaraju, Mr. Prasad Babu, all of these people. It's been amazing talking to you and getting to know your initiatives. And also, I'm pretty sure the audience had a lot to gain from this. And again, thank you very much for your help. Mr. Chetan Kumar, do you have a question or is your hand raised since the previous instance?
Yes,
Okay.
I have one question.
Please,
Question is to Mr. Ankit Magan. Sir, I have one idea that is it called rainwater harvesting? Suppose we have in our industry, we have a big gardening area, landscaping area. We elevate the boundary of the garden with the suitable RCC or brickwork, and entire rainwater from the building and from the road we store in the garden, and slowly it gets deposited in the shallow fast aquifer. It will get, some part of it get evaporated and majority part of it get goes into the shallow aquifer, the first aquifer. Does it considered as a rainwater harvesting or not?
Yes, sir. In fact, I'm not talking about NCR. I'm only talking about Delhi. That is the only system that has been approved by the Delhi Jal Board. So, if you make a soak pit, what I can understand, you were talking about kind of soak pit or percolation tank. That is definitely considered under.
I am not talking about the soak pit. I turn entire garden area into the rainwater harvesting pond. There is no excavation kind of thing, single things. I just elevate the boundary of my, for example, there is one municipal garden having pathway across its boundaries for walking the people. Whenever there is a rain, the building water will be transferred to the garden area through the natural flow without any pumping or anything. And after some time, the water stored in the garden will dissipate into the shallow aquifer. After a break between the
That-
1 or 2 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
As of date, that is not considered rainwater harvesting, and that is also not advisable because you are creating a problem. Like you're trying to solve this through harvesting, but that will create a problem of flood. I'll give you example. So let's say you have 10,000 square meter area, and
Yeah.
the garden area is roughly around 1,000 square meter or 1,500 square meter. Right. So, sorry, Chetanji, where are you from?
I'm from Ahmedabad.
Ahmedabad. So, considering the Ahmedabad rainfall, the water that will come in that 8,000 square meter rooftop area will be roughly around 170 cubic meter, which says 1,70,000 liter in a day. And
Yeah.
without excavating or without making a tank, just by increasing the boundary, you'll not be able to take care of this 1,70,000 liter water, and it will take like many days, almost a month, for it to get percolated. So that is not advisable, and that is not considered as rainwater harvesting as of now. But yes, if you are making a underground soak pit or percolation tank, that can be done. Here also the recharge rate or percolation rate is very important, and that needs to be considered.
Sir, what experience that within a 3 or 5 days break, rain break between two rains, it get percolated and up to 4 lakh metric liter, 4,000 KL water, we can percolate through this gardening of around 2,500 square meter area.
So
2,500 square meter. 500 square meter.
So when
If we make at least 2 feet wall across the boundary, 1.5 to 2 feet for wall across the boundary.
So you are making an artificial pond sort of thing, and
Yes.
without excavating, you by increasing the height and overground pond sort of thing, what you are doing.
Yeah.
And if the
Yes.
percolation rate is so high, then you can definitely consider it and give the application to the government that we are already doing this as a percolation sort of thing. And because overground tanks are also allowed for rainwater harvesting, it's not compulsory that one has to do underground tank. But 37,000 liter, if the percolation rate is high, then only it's advisable. Otherwise, it will also create a seepage problem in the boundary wall or the building next to the area.
See, if I don't have any other mechanism of rainwater harvesting, I can select this kind of mechanism. And if I have not stored if I have not stored water in the garden, otherwise water will be on the road or run away in the rainwater trenches, rainwater. Yeah.
This building is like, this is an industry, or what exactly is this?
Commercial building or industry. Suppose if it is industry.
So I'll give you a solution, sir. So whatever you're saying, let's consider that, and you can just install a pump and use this water for secondary purpose. For like, if there is gap of 5 days between two rains, then you can use this water, sir, for toilets and everything else, or you can wherever you have.
Exactly, we put the ultra filter. We filter out this rainwater through ultra filtration, and then we use in the utilities, in the toilets, in the
that is acceptable. That is totally acceptable, sir.
The only problem we are facing with this technology is is that mosquitoes. Mosquito breeding is
Sir, something,
major concern.
sir, I'll give you a desi solution, sir. So you put eucalyptus oil or neem cha oil in that area.
Okay.
It will prevent you from mosquito breeding.
Neem oil. Oh, great,
Neem
great.
cha oil or eucalyptus oil.
Okay. Yeah,
This will
understand.
not affect the property of water as well. So in olden days, just to prevent the evaporation loss and from prevent mosquito breeding and all, so what people used to do in various pond was they used to put eucalyptus oil. And eucalyptus oil, it works so beautifully, though we don't recommend eucalyptus tree because it requires a lot of water. But this oil reduce evaporation at least by 50 to 60%. So still now, if you go towards Rajasthan, they are using this eucalyptus oil for doing evaporation loss prevention.
This
Try
is
this
the
and just let
recommended.
me know. Chetanji, just let me know. I'll also try to learn this thing. And if this works very well, I'm also doing an experiment with you. If this works very well, we'll start recommending this thing.
Sir, it works. I have a 5 years experience. Actually, we
Yeah,
have
I'm
a
talking
design
about
with the
eucalyptus
Tulsi.
oil.
Yeah, definitely I'll try this neem oil and eucalyptus oil because here there are
Sure,
so
sir.
many plants of eucalyptus are there.
Right.
We can, yeah.
All right. So with that, I'd like to conclude the event. If first of all, again, I'd like to thank the speakers. It has been amazing talking with you, and yes, sir. So we look forward to connecting later on as well.
Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.